You're listening to the Femtrepreneur Show. This is episode 23. In this episode, we're talking about why you need to be building relationships with people in your niche and how to do it over the process of 4 weeks. Hey guys, I'm Mariah.
And I'm Megan, and people always hear us recommend joint venture webinars, guest posting, and different ways to collaborate with other people in your niche or industry. But it can be kind of scary. We get a lot of questions about the best way to do it, how to not feel like an idiot or a newbie when you're doing it. And I say that because I have felt that way, definitely.
Me too. I still sometimes feel that way.
Yeah, so we totally get why that's the way you feel. And so we want to help you out. And so first we're gonna just get on the same page about why you should be collaborating with other people. Make sure we're all starting from the same place in case you haven't heard us share that before. And then Mariah's gonna go into some of the best steps for how to actually do this. So I'm really excited for this episode.
Awesome. Well, let's dig in. So for anyone who hasn't heard us talk about how fun and awesome it is to collaborate with other business owners when you're starting to grow your business, it's the way that we built up Femtrepreneur from absolute scratch, and our business grew really fast because I put such a huge focus on relationships, and I put a focus on meeting other people in my industry, partnering up with them in all sorts of different ways, whether it was a guest post or a joint venture webinar or being on their podcast or some kind of swap or collaboration. And that's how I got introduced to a lot of different audiences very quickly by basically just becoming friends with people in my niche that I thought we would have a really complementary skill set and it would make sense for us to do some sort of partnership together. And that didn't have to be like partnering on a product or a launch or anything as committed as that. It was more just how can we do something fun together and introduce my audience to yours and introduce myself to your audience. So this is how we built our business, and it's the fastest way to grow your business is to identify other people in your niche who already have email lists or audiences or Facebook groups or some kind of community, and then you want to get introduced to that community by the leader of that community. And not only is it a really good way to grow your business really fast, it also creates immediate trust. So when someone that audience already knows, likes, and trusts is introducing you as like, hey, here's my friend Mariah. She's really good at webinars. Like, this is who you should learn from if you want to learn X, Y, and Z. Or someone just introduces you to their audience, you immediately have more trust factor than if you had just randomly shown up somewhere, whether it's in someone's feed or on social media, and they don't really know who you are. So it's almost like getting that like personal introduction like from a best friend, as opposed to just like seeing someone on Tinder and being like, oh, I don't know who that is.
Love it. Yeah. And I think something that's worth just clarifying before we go any farther, and Mariah, you might have something to add to this too, is when we're saying collaborating with someone in your niche, that's not like a competitor who does exactly what you do in your niche. I just want to make sure we're on the same page about the benefit is that it is someone who is still speaking to your same ideal client, but they're coming at it maybe from a different angle. You have a phrase for it, right, Mariah?
Yeah, it's called vertical market partners. Okay. So your vertical market partners are people who serve the same customer, but in a different way. So for example, if I partnered up with someone who's like an Instagram expert, that would make sense because I don't know about Instagram. I'm not an Instagram expert, but we both still serve online business owners, but in totally different ways. So that would be the kind of perfect person to collaborate with. And so this is how, when you start building relationships with people, this is how you're going to have those opportunities to do joint venture webinars or to get a guest posting gig or to be invited on a podcast. But you have to lay the foundation by building an actual relationship first. It would be very rare that if you just reached out in a cold email and this person had never seen your name or heard of you before, that it would work. So that's why we spend time building up relationships for quite a while before we actually make any kind of pitch or any kind of ask about collaborating with someone. And this is how we grew Femtrepreneur in a totally relationship-based way. And I chose to do this instead of paying for ads for 2 reasons. One, it kept our overhead low in the beginning. So when we were just starting the business, a lot of people will feel stuck with growing their audience in the beginning, and so they'll resort to sort of paying for Facebook ads before they really have the budget for it and before they really even know what they're doing or what their business is about. So it kept our overhead low, but it also allowed me to build trust really fast because, like I said, sort of having a personal introduction to someone's audience was a lot more effective than just showing up in their Facebook feed as an ad or someone who they'd never heard of before. So there's a lot of benefits to having a sort of relationship-based business. If anything, you definitely want to incorporate this into your plan, especially as your business grows and you think about having affiliates. So a lot of times the people who will become your affiliates sort of down the line are people that you did a joint venture webinar with one time, or people that you really hit it off when you did a podcast interview with them or something like that.
I love that. Well, so I think now we all know why we should, but going back to our intro on how it can be scary, like you have a 4-week process for the best way to do this. So yes. I want to dig into that. And before we do, just in case you want to know more about this or you want a visual aid for this, Mariah actually has a relationship building map that you can download that outlines exactly what we're going to talk about, how to do this over 4 weeks. So you can get the link for that below this video or in the show notes for this podcast.
Yep. It just walks you through the sort of like workflow of like when to do what in like a timeline, because I think a lot of people, they make the mistake of either going from, oh, I've never talked to this person. They send them an email asking for them to do a collaboration or a joint venture webinar, and it's like out of the blue and they get a no. And then some people might just spend so long like building up the relationship or warming up the relationship that they never get to the ask. And that's like the thing that I do, that's kind of my self-sabotage is like, I'll spend so long building up the relationship, but I always feel like, is it the right time to make the ask? Like, is it the right time to pitch them that I should be on their podcast or something like that? So we see it both ways, but basically within a 4-week period, you should be able to build an actual solid relationship with someone to the point where they know who you are, they know your name, doesn't feel like you're just a random stranger, and you're in a position to really provide value to their audience. And I think that's the key as well, is coming at it from a perspective of you have value to provide. You're not just asking selfishly for something. Yes, it's going to get you more exposure for your business and for your brand, but you're not just asking selfishly. You really do have something great to share with their audience that would help them.
I love that. Such a good reminder, too, for having the right perspective going into this.
Totally. And the other part of this is you cannot go into this process. It takes time, it takes effort, and at the end, there's no guarantee. So if you go into this process feeling entitled to their collaboration or their partnership, if you're like, man, I just put 4 weeks of work like retweeting them and talking to them and emailing with them, and it didn't work out in the end, you just have to go into it without that expectation that they're going to reciprocate. I always go into it with no expectations, just saying I really do want to build a relationship with this person, and if it ends up leading to a collaboration that benefits both of us, that's great. But I never go into it feeling like this has to work out, or having that sort of like entitlement that I'm owed something by the end of this sort of period.
Such a good perspective. Okay, so week 1, what do we do?
Okay. So, so in these 4 weeks, the first week, your job is to make a spreadsheet of all the potential collaborators in your niche. So this is people with big blogs, people with email lists, people with Facebook groups, people who are leading communities online, people who are just influencers. They might have a big social media following. Basically, you want to make a list of every single person in your niche that you can identify that has some kind of audience. And it doesn't have to necessarily be email lists. It might be that they have a big Facebook following or something like that. But you want to identify as many influencers as you can. Now, a lot of people at this stage, they get stuck because they're like, well, why would that person ever talk to me? But the thing is that you're going to build up momentum and you're going to kind of like work up to those bigger influencers. Trust me, there's tons of people in my industry that a year ago I would have been like, I'm never going to have a chat. Like, why would they ever talk to me or care or like respond to my emails? And now they reach out to me and ask me to do collaborations. So you don't, even if you're writing down names of people that you're like, I don't know, that you feel like that person is like famous in your niche and you're like, why would they ever care about me? Just keep them in mind anyway, because you're going to work up to that level.
Love it.
Okay. So in order to find these people, if you don't already know who these people are in your industry, just go down the rabbit hole, Google, use BuzzSumo. That's a really good resource for finding like what are the most popular sort of websites or articles or influencers or people on Twitter in your niche. So use a service like BuzzSumo. Just look on Twitter. I usually sort of go down this thing where when I'm making the spreadsheet, I'm usually going through and seeing who follows who. So if I find someone who seems like a good fit as a potential collaborator, I'll go and see, well, who's everyone that they follow? And then I'll see if there's anyone that leads me to, and then say, well, who's everyone that they follow? So whether it's on Twitter or Instagram, I generally just go down the rabbit hole. And this takes time. Like I would spend a week just trying to research, like, what is this list of like 50 to 100 potential collaborators?
Yeah, and I have a few other ideas too of other rabbit holes to go down. I know on YouTube, of course, I'm kind of into YouTube right now. So I have like searched Squarespace on YouTube and seen like who's talking about Squarespace and who has a lot of followers and what videos are getting traction, and going down that rabbit hole. And then even going down the rabbit hole of course, I forgot it as I was saying it, YouTube. And then,
is it a platform?
Pinterest, I think. Yeah, it was another platform. Yes, Pinterest. I was going to say, you can search on Pinterest and see the pins that are getting the most pins and the most engagement. And
that's a good point.
Just any kind of search platform like that is going to be really, really helpful, I feel like, in seeing who else is out there. Yes. Facebook groups, all that stuff.
Yes, definitely. Facebook groups, see who's leading Facebook groups, who has an audience. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, they have the biggest audience, but just someone that you feel like you could provide value to their followers and they have a decent amount, an amount that feels worth it to you, which like in the beginning, I was like, oh, I would love to collaborate with anyone else with 500 subscribers because that's how many I had. You know what I mean? So you kind of work up to being like different, to working at different levels almost. Okay, so that's the first step, is just making the spreadsheet and naming every single influencer or person in your space that you can think of. Okay, so
I like the idea of what you said about how you should go ahead and put bigger names on there too. So
yes,
I think it's like we like to dream big and aim high, and I think if that is something you really want to build a relationship with them, it's probably just going to take more time. But I think going ahead and putting it on this spreadsheet and having that on your list of people and starting that process, I think is still a really great thing to do.
I'm like one of those creepy people, and a lot of people will see that. A lot of people will see this process and they'll be like, wow, you have this like really creepy, specific way of making friends. And it's totally true. Like when I find someone that I think is cool and inspiring and awesome and smart, I just want to be friends with them. And like I said, if it leads to a collaboration that's mutually beneficial, that's great. But my core purpose is that I just want to be friends with as many awesome people as I can. And I have this creepy list of basically like people I want to be friends with. And it's something that from the mindset perspective, if you have that in your mind of like, these are the people that I'm eventually going to be friends with. I mean, I talk about this with Maya all the time, where I'm like, oh, before I knew you, I had written down on my spreadsheet that we were going to be friends. So now we are. So it can feel weird, but I want to make sure that you guys are saying that nothing is impossible. And if you provide enough value, other people will want to share your work as well.
Love it. Okay. So that's week 1. What do we do in week 2?
So in the second week, you want to go through all these people and subscribe to all their newsletters. If you aren't already subscribed to their email list, you need to do that first and foremost. Make sure that you're following them on every single platform. So you're on their email list, you're following them on Twitter, you're following them on Instagram, you're keeping up with what they're doing. This is really important because you need to be able to, in the next step, you need to be able to actually respond to something relevant to them. So it's important for you to not just say, oh, that person has 1,000 subscribers or 1,000 followers on Facebook. That would be a great person. And then you don't engage with them. You need to find out like, what are they posting questions about? What are they interested in? What are they promoting right now? Are they working on a book? Like, do they have a course coming out? Like, you almost just need to pay attention conversation. And that way you can, when you do finally connect with them, you have something real to say to them. Like if you're following someone, that they just moved, you can be like, oh my gosh, how do you like the new house? I noticed, I've been following your posts on Facebook. And I think that's really nice, as opposed to just being like, oh, what are you working on right now? And they're like, I post about it on Instagram all the time, what I'm up to. So you have to pay attention and you have to like put some effort. Okay.
I love that. And I think one tip, in case, I don't even know if you use this tool or not, Mariah, but there's a tool called Unroll Me that a lot of people use to like roll up their like newsletters that they subscribe to. And a tip I have is that if you really want to make sure you're reading every newsletter someone sends out, especially during this phase where you're intentionally trying to build a relationship, make sure they're not in your roll up every day, and make sure you're just actually getting their email to your inbox directly, because I think that that's easier. I know for me, I'll get a roll up and sometimes I like don't look at it that day, or I forget to look at it ever, and therefore I've missed newsletters that I might have cared about. So just in case you're using any kind of like roll up subscription for your inbox, I would encourage you to, even if it's 3 or 4 people at a time, just, make sure you're getting their emails directly so you can read that and read it relevantly.
Good point. Really good point. I don't use Unroll Me, but I probably should.
You should. It's great. It does stink though, like what I said, when there are certain people you want to follow along on something, sometimes it's kind of easier to get lost, but it's still.
That's a really good tip. Okay, so what you want to do at this stage is make sure you're following them everywhere and paying attention to what they're up to. At this stage, you also start liking their posts. So I know that there's a way that I think our friend Sunny told us about, that you can like get notified anytime that someone posts something on different platforms. I can't remember if this is just per platform. You just say like notify me first or something.
Yeah, I don't remember if there's one specific tool, but I do know within each platform you can go and have your phone get notifications. So like YouTube allows it, Instagram allows it. I know Facebook, you can set a preference where it'll show that person's post at the top of your newsfeed. So there's different things like that, but maybe there is like a catch-all device. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, I think you're right though about it being like per platform. So you go in and make sure that you have your notifications turned on for their posts, and then you want to make sure that you like everything, that you like their posts on Facebook, that you like their Instagram photos, that you don't want to miss anything, because you want to make sure that you're the first person to like their stuff. You can even, leave a comment or favorite something or retweet them at this stage. So you're not necessarily at the stage yet where you're having a conversation with them, but you're starting to become visible, right? So that's week 2, is just starting to become visible to them, liking their posts and following them, making sure that they might see your name when you follow them or like their stuff. Now, in the next week, you take this to the next level. Of course, I also want to say, while we're in this, I laid this out as a 4-week period, but a lot of people we know do this in a really compressed timeline. So it's possible that you could do this in a week. Like, it's possible that you could identify everyone, start liking their stuff, do that for 3 days, then start contacting them. Like, you could do this in a week or 2 if you wanted to, but I've always done it in a sort of like slower process, mostly because I'm building a long-term relationship. So
that's what I was gonna say.
Just as much for me. It's just as much for me of being like, do I, after following them more closely, like maybe you know who they are, but after following them more closely for 4 weeks, do you still feel like they're a good fit? Do you still feel like you want to have a relationship with them? Because this is not easy. This takes a lot of time and energy and effort to build relationships. It's not just free. So I kind of like to spend 4 weeks assessing.
I also feel like by doing it slower and doing this in 4 weeks, it's going to feel more natural. It's going to feel organic.
Yes.
I think anyone who knows about this type of relationship building strategy, it's like I can kind of tell when someone's trying to do this with me, and I can respect it. Like, I appreciate it and it means a lot to me. So it doesn't mean that I'm not receptive to it. But if it's like fast forwarded and I'm not ready to start a conversation, then it can feel forced. And I think that's like the one thing you want to avoid with all of this, and you've touched on this in different perspectives, is this isn't supposed to be like a forced relationship. You want to actually be building like a real relationship. You want to actually still want to be friends with this person through the process, and you want to actually care about them. So you have to come at this from like a really genuine place for it to be a long-lasting connection and relationship. So I like doing it slower. I think
I do too.
makes it real, because you do want to be friends with them. This isn't just to like know cool people, like know famous people. Like you need to actually care.
Definitely. Yeah, and I mean, and you might decide like
beneficial.
you might decide like, oh, this isn't a good fit, or like, and this isn't like, I want to be friends with them, but it doesn't make sense for us to collaborate or whatever.
That's such a good point.
So let that happen. But I would also say, like you're saying, from the receiving end, like you said, if someone like joins my Facebook group, follows me everywhere, starts liking everything, and then 2 days later is like, hey, like I think I would then they're pitching me on a joint venture webinar, and I'm just like, I know that you just found out about me, and you know what I mean? It's like, you weren't on my list 2 days ago, so I don't think you're like my biggest fan. Yeah. Maybe you are. Maybe it only takes 2 days. But I do think on the receiving end, make sure that you're paying attention to that as well, and just being cognizant of what that looks like. Okay. So at this point, you're just trying to you're just trying to make them aware that you exist. So like I said, this can kind of happen in the same week, or you can do this over 2 weeks. But after you subscribe to all their stuff and follow them everywhere, now is when you start to actually kind of start conversations with them. So that means like, when they're tweeting something and you reply to their tweets. So like at this point, this is so funny, but I know for me, I have a lot of like just insecurity about like, are they going to think I'm cool, or like, are they going to think I'm dumb or whatever? So to me, it takes like 2 or 3 weeks to get to the point of feeling comfortable responding to their comment, or like responding to a tweet that, say they put out a tweet and it's just like, hey, what's your guys' favorite TV show or whatever, like to even respond and be visible to them sometimes takes me that long to work up to feeling comfortable with that.
Yeah, and just to be clear, so we're on week 3
now. We're moving into week 3. So in week 3 is when you really start becoming visible to these people that you've started, relationship building with. And so you're replying to their tweets with relevant information. You're commenting on all their Facebook posts. You're sharing their stuff. So the next step of this week 3 stuff is beyond just commenting and interacting. You actually start sharing their content on your platforms. Doesn't matter how small it is. Doesn't matter if you don't have a lot of followers, but you start sharing their stuff on Facebook. You start retweeting their tweets. You start putting tweets into your buffer that are actually links to their articles. Be like, I love this link from, Mrs. A. It's so awesome. Definitely go check it out. And then they're tagged and they see that you've shared their stuff. And it's just so generous. This whole period is just about you being really generous. So you're mentioning them on your blog. You might even write a blog post about like stuff you learned from them, or write a blog post where you mention them and link back to them. You might make a post on Facebook just being like, I appreciate this person. I love following them and I've learned so much from them, and you tag them so that they see. And so basically this is the give week, where you're just like mentioning them, posting their links. And like I said, there's no guarantee that they're gonna reciprocate. They might not promote you. That's okay. You still want to make sure that you feel really good about just being like putting it out there. And this is where I feel like things really start to turn, where people really start noticing you. So it's one thing to leave comments, but when you make the act of just generously, selflessly sharing someone else's content with your audience, no matter how small it is, I know for me, I just appreciate that more than anything else. Like if someone wants to share my webinar with their 100 Twitter followers, I'm like, I can't believe how generous that is. That's so nice of you. Like I really appreciate it. No matter what size your audience is on any platform, I don't care. I just think that that's so nice.
Yeah, and I was on the receiving end of something like this recently that really meant so much to me. It was on Instagram, and someone like dedicated a whole Instagram, like they posted a picture and the entire caption was on my spreadsheets, the 2017 planning spreadsheets.
So nice.
The entire thing was just them. They tagged me in the photo, they mentioned it, they said all this nice stuff about how much they benefited from it. And that was it. Like there was no expectation necessarily on their end, but it meant so much to me that someone would dedicate a whole Instagram post to me. It was like, that really made an impact on me. And we started a dialogue, and like now there's like a relationship forming that wouldn't have been there otherwise, because she wasn't necessarily like on my radar in that way. So
absolutely,
I think that's just an example just to give people ideas. And it does really mean a lot to us. So, yeah.
Yeah, like we remember we will
I won't forget that.
Yeah, like we'll know who you are. And even if we can't necessarily like, you know, this is just from in our perspective, in our niche, like even if we can't like promote you right away or anything like that, it's still going to be something where like I'm going to retweet you because to my followers, which, 10,000 people, because you retweeted me to your 100 people.
And I even did like I did like an Instagram story where I had screenshotted it.
Yes.
And I shared it as an Instagram story and I like tagged her handle.
Exactly.
So, I mean, yeah,
it's very reciprocal. For sure. And the thing is that like there's studies that show that people, even when you're not directly asking them, they want to reciprocate. Everyone wants to reciprocate. That's why giving value works, because they want to buy something from you eventually because they just feel like you've done so much for them. So it really will pay. It'll come back to you over time, maybe not in a direct, like, I did this for you, I want you to do that for me, but it will come back to you over time for sure. Okay, so at this point, you're just like on their radar. You haven't pitched anything, but you're providing a lot of value to them. You're giving to them before you make any asks. Now, in the 4th week, the next thing that you're going to do is when you're actually going to establish contact and get ready to make the ask, or just get ready to open up the possibility of a deeper collaboration. So in the 4th week, when they send out their next email newsletter, you're going to hit reply and you're going to tell them how much you appreciated that content that they shared. You're going to tell them how much like you appreciated what they've been doing lately. Again, this is where it really comes in handy that you've been following them and what they're up to, because you want to hit reply on their next newsletter and you want to respond to something relevant. So whether that's responding to the actual content in the newsletter or that's responding to something that they posted on Facebook, the day before, or something that they shared on Instagram, and you just want to make it known that you actually engage and follow them. Like, for example, I have people that will send me emails and pitch me, and they'll be like, I love that post that you wrote about blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, that was a fucking guest post. Like, I didn't write that. Like, I'll just be like, I didn't write that. So to me, that's just like, boo. Like, you get, like, I'm never going to talk to you again if you tell me that you loved my insights on X, Y, and Z, and it was something that I didn't even write. Boo, don't do it that way. I just think it's like so dumb when I'm like, did you seriously not do any research? Like, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Now I'll never collaborate with you. Because it's so fucking lazy. Anyway, that's why I'm like, I don't like it when people do this the lazy way. And I know from experience that doing it the hard way is what works. Like, doing it the right way is worth it. Doing it the lazy way, yeah, you might send out 100 emails to 100 people and maybe 2 of them will respond, but that isn't long-term going to grow your business. That's why we do it this way. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so you hit reply to their next newsletter and you let them know how much like they've helped you. Say something very legitimately complimentary that you have to mean. So it can't just be like, oh, I love you so much. Everything you do is great. It has to be specific to something that they've shared in the last week or so. And it should be, if possible, you should share some sort of result that you've gotten. So if you can say like, hey, like I loved what you shared on Instagram the other day. I did what you recommended and I've seen this little result and it's been so awesome so far. So I just want to say thank you. That's a really good introduction because from our perspective, it makes us want to feature you, makes us want to share you because you've gotten a positive result from something that we've shared. So this is, again, you're getting really close, but you're not pitching yet. This is just to establish an open line of email communication. So this is kind of taking it from social media into the realm of email, which is a little less, you could do this with a Facebook message or something, but again, I usually ignore Facebook messages from people who I'm not friends with. So this is kind of just opening this channel where it's more appropriate to eventually make an ask. This is just starting a conversation. So you tell them that you've gotten a lot out of their content, you've learned something from them, be specific. Now, if they respond to that email, that is your chance to mention the potential for a guest post, a case study, an interview on their podcast, a joint venture webinar, something else. So if they respond and say like, wow, thank you so much for telling me that. Like, I really appreciate it. I love that you're getting so much value, blah, blah. If they respond to you, then that's the time to mention the possibility of like, hey, maybe it would make sense for us to collaborate on something. Like, I feel like our audiences are really similar. That's the time. So you've done all this work and then finally you get to the point of if they respond to that email, then you're open and it's a good time to make the proposal basically. And if you can, offer them something in exchange. So for us, it could be like, hey, I think we should, I'd love to be on your podcast, and in return, I'd love to have you on ours. Or so we have a little bit of leverage, which I know you might not feel like you have leverage, but just think, oh, I'd love to share you on Instagram. I'd love to share your product on Twitter. I'd love to post about you in my Facebook group or something like that. Think if you do have any leverage, something you could do in exchange. If you don't, that's okay. But yeah,
I feel like
that's
being
the
a
final
case
step.
study. Offering to be a case study is like the ultimate.
Yes.
Leverage,
then I'll
I
just
feel
promote
like.
you everywhere.
Yeah.
My case studies are always, they're all like, wow, like my highest source of traffic is the fact that we promote them so much. It's like, if you want to be a case study for us, like we'll just promote you everywhere. And you'll end up getting a lot of traffic from it, which is really, really nice to be able to kind of reciprocate our case studies for that as well.
Yeah. Now, if someone, I know not everyone will say yes, but so let's say you send an email at week 4 and they don't respond. What would you say is the next step? Just keep engaging on social media, and in a few weeks, maybe email them again?
Definitely.
Or, okay.
I would say just realize that not everyone is going to say yes, but some people are also just really busy. So I know that people will contact us and want to do something, and in my mind I'll be like, yeah, totally, but like I can't even think about that for 3 months. Like I'll be like, yeah, I want to do something, but like I can't commit to like a date anytime soon. So everyone is busy, and I would say just keep going at it with that open heart of like, how else can I give? How else can I communicate with them on social media? Keep that going. If you just shut down and you're like, they didn't say anything back, or they said no, and you just like stop engaging, then that's a no forever. Whereas like no right now could be a yes in 2 or 3 months when I have more time, or when my schedule is opened up, or when I'm not booked out 3 months in advance for podcasts and stuff like that. So it's really a thing of like, don't let a maybe or a no or a not right now, don't let that stop you, and then you shut down, and then you've killed all your chances. It really comes from really just having like a generous sort of approach to this, and not just knowing that eventually it's going to come back to you.
Yeah. And I know throughout this conversation, you and I have given examples and talked about how we've been on the receiving end, but I just want everyone listening to know this is still an approach that we use to
every day
to grow relationships. So we're not
every day,
we're not at the end of this. It's an ongoing process, and we still use this exact same strategy to grow new relationships in the business. At
the beginning, at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, I wrote out I kind of updated my list of people that I'm going to connect with over the next year. So it's really cool to look back at the list I made at the beginning of 2016. There was like 100 people, and how many of those people I did connect with is amazing to me, especially a lot of the people that I thought, oh gosh, they're never going to want to talk to me. And then it got to the point where it's like, they're reaching out to me. So it's really cool to look back and see that, but we're still doing this at this level as well. This is exactly what I do. And I'll spend 4 weeks building up the relationship, retweeting people, starting to like their stuff on Facebook, commenting, starting a little DM combo on the side, like just kind of feeling it out is a big part of it. If they are super nice and they seem open to something, you'll notice the opportunities arise.
Yeah. Oh, I have a question. Okay. So this might be a creepy question, but since we've acknowledged that this could be a creepy process, I feel like that's okay. Do you like take notes anywhere, or like have like a running log of like where you are in the process with each person, or what do you do?
Yeah. So the way that I had this set up was in Asana, and this was actually before Asana had boards, but now Asana has boards. But yeah, I have it in Asana project that has like every stage of the relationship. So stage 1 is like just like I am aware of their existence, and then it's like I followed them on everything, and I started to like and retweet them, and respond to some of their stuff, and then it's like the next stage for me is like, have they acknowledged that I exist? So
like, have they replied to anything?
Like, have they ever replied to a comment? Have they ever commented on something of mine? Have they ever liked, like, sometimes I'll see that like someone famous like liked my photo on Instagram, and I'll be like, oh wow, like they know I exist. Even if we haven't talked yet, I'm like, they know I am alive. So it'll kind of be like, am I on their radar, even if we're not friends yet? So that'll like move them over the next spot. And then like, have we made contact? Like, have we had a little tiny conversation, even if it's in like Instagram comments or something, or on Periscope comments or whatever, like they acknowledge that I was watching their Periscope or something. And then we'll go to the next step of like, have I established some other more like private conversation with them? And we go from there.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah,
idea.
I do. I like to know where everyone is at in the process. And some people get stuck in like, some people will never respond to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like some people will never engage with me. They'll just never acknowledge the fact that I am following them or liking their stuff or whatever. And that's totally fine. It's just not the right time. And then I think also in the spreadsheet, you could keep notes of things that you're like, oh, they're launching their new course in March. You know, like if you wanted to take notes of like what they're up to, you could do that to keep organized as well.
I'm a note taker, so that's why I was asking.
I love that. No, it's definitely a Kanban process. Like it's definitely a to-do, doing, done type Kanban structure of like moving someone through the process.
Yeah, love that. Well, I think that relationship building map is going to be really helpful. I think I'm going to go through this process for myself for 2017.
Yes, definitely.
So if you're listening and you want to find the show notes to this episode or any of the links to the resources we mentioned, including our relationship building map that you can download for free, just go to thefemshow.com/23. And if you want to discuss this episode with us and a whole community of awesome, ambitious entrepreneurs, make sure you join our free Facebook group at thefemshow.com/community.
And if you like this episode, please subscribe to the Femtrepreneur Show on iTunes and leave a rating and a review. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment with your thoughts and remember to hit the like button and subscribe. If you have a question for us that you want us to answer and you'll get a shout out on the show, don't forget to go to thefemshow.com to submit your questions so that we can answer them. You're listening to the Femtrepreneur Show. This is episode 23. In this episode, we're talking about why you've been eating... Wow. I'm sorry. Let's start over. Okay.
That's okay.